Hey there folks, and welcome to something a little bit quick and short. Not really a full-on how I paint things, but I do want to show you one or two things that I have discovered while playing around with the new Cadian sets. Now these new plastic infantry are coming out this weekend, so tomorrow I think they're in stores, which is cool, but side by side, let's throw them violently to the deck there, you can see there is a bit of difference between the new and the old Cadians. Proportion-wise, these guys are a lot more human, let's say. They are more accurate. On the tabletop, you're not going to miss out. If you put old guys and new guys together, they're not going to look so crazy that it's not suitable. But if you want to convert your new Cadians, it's changing things up a fair bit. Because suddenly, all of the third-party heads, which have been designed to fit these torsos, they aren't going to do it with these guys, so what are your options? Luckily, I've been playing around and finding a few of those myself. I'm going to share what I have discovered so far, and if you do have any ideas or suggestions, please drop them in the comments, because I think folks are going to be looking for some answers on this one. So one of the big changes to the proportions on these guys is this neck joint. Miniatures that were designed to fit that fairly shallow neck socket, they're going to need something underneath now to bulk it out a little bit and sit upright properly in that rather deep well that it's got there. So the easy option is what I want to highlight sort of straight away. Now, looking at Anvil Industry, they are one of my favorite suppliers of third-party parts, and they've always designed their guys with this fairly thick neck joint at the bottom because they're designed, look, there's another one, to fit the Anvil Industry torsos, which have a socket very similar to these Cadians, which means if I drop that sucker in there, it fits. Actually, let's get a different, and look, yet another head. It fits. And it fits super well too. Like, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to bulk it out. I could glue that in right now. The reason why I was trying to show you on the other fella is if I pick up a head which doesn't have a mask on, these guys are sculpted more proportion to the old guard stuff. And what you're going to find, alongside their hands, the heads are going to look just a little big. Not so huge that I would say you can't use them at all. But yeah, they're going to stand out if you've got an eye for that sort of thing. If it doesn't bother you, go for it. But the miniatures that have masks, they bulk it out a little bit in such a way that it looks way less noticeable, and I think you can get away with those much more easily. These Stahlhelm, sort of Steel Legion looking heads, they are brilliant. They fit perfectly. They would get a recommendation if you wanted to make these guys into Steel Legion or some sort of mechanized infantry force. These, from Anvil Industry, just brilliant. Now, one of the other names in aftermarket guard parts, if you will, is Victoria Miniatures. Now, their stuff has always been a little bit skinnier and more narrow than the other things like Anvil and what have you, so they're actually going to fit fairly well with the new Cadians. Now, there is a range of 3D printable heads, which have also come along in resin too, which were designed to fit the new Kazarkin. And with just a little bit of sanding, like the neck joint itself is probably deeper and thicker than it needs to be. But the heads are scaled correctly. I don't think it would take much work to file off a little from the bottom of the neck joint and have that fit perfectly. Quick word of warning though, if you decide you do want to go with the pith helmets, there are normally these little satchels that fit up on the top of the backpacks here. If you put the pith helmets on, don't put the baggy things on the back because they won't fit. You're going to knock the heads forward as a result. And then really the surprise was the spare heads I had left over on some bolt action miniatures. This is one of the American heads. I've popped a little bit of blue tack in there to fill in the neck. Obviously that's going to be something you need to find a solution for. But these spare heads are actually the perfect scale to fit the new Cadians. So if you've ever wanted to do that 101st Airborne themed thing after seeing Band of Brothers or something similar, even the Brody helmets, for example, from the 8th Army or what have you, yeah, they'll fit perfectly well. Sikh heads and similar, you've got a huge amount of options from the bolt action range. And yeah, just ask them buddies if they're into World War II gaming. Give me your spare heads. That works super well. I was really surprised by that. But finally, if you know me, you've stuck around the channel for a while, you know I can't help but overcomplicate a solution to a problem. So, like anybody with a 3D printer, I can't help but occasionally mention that I have a 3D printer. But ironically enough, the reason why I got it in the first place was for conversion parts. And I think I've finally been vindicated in that regard. So what I have here, this is a line of heads from Piano Wargames. Now, they do a wonderful range of historical miniatures, and they are scaled very similarly to the Perry Miniatures line, if you've ever seen their stuff, which means they're just a fraction too small, ordinarily. But what I've done is I took one of the head sprues. This is the Hessen-Darmstadt Charcot set, which you can buy separately as an STL. I scaled it up to 103%. That took a little bit of trial and error to get the right scale there. But after some testing, 103% is the right size for that. And then after converting that, I've taken, digitally, the neck joint from the Victoria Miniatures guys, popped it off of these, and then slipped it on under every head on this sprue. And now what I've got, it was a bit of a faff, but what I've got now is a head sprue that I can print off, and I've got 3D printable Charcots for my Cadians. So we'll snip that off. Then all I got to do is buff the bottom of the neck joint with a little bit of sandpaper, glue it in place, and there we go. Something a little bit unusual, something uncommon, historically inspired, which is always a good look for Imperial Guard, or Astra Militarum. But what does it look like painted? Ta-da! The short answer, I think, is pretty cool. It works well enough. In particular, I found using the cuffs and collar as sort of a turn-back analog works quite well. Most of this is contrast, a little bit of shading, and yeah, that's cool. So, is it more work to convert these new plastic Cadians? Short answer is yes. Is it possible? Also yes. I think we're going to see a lot of companies and small producers move into the new scale fairly quickly. Victoria Miniatures certainly has, and others that are producing third-party parts with an eye to these guys, I think there's going to be a compatibility shift over time. But in the meantime, there are plenty of things you can still do. I think the Anvil Industry heads work very well, especially those Stahlhelms. They just work brilliantly. But yeah, if you've got any other suggestions, stuff that you've found, other heads that you know work, please do drop them in the comments so that other folks get a look at what is out there. Because I think the selling point for Guard for me has always been that you can do anything with them. The worlds of the Imperium are vast and varied, so being able to tweak your regiment to look how you want is really part of the appeal. If Space Marines can do it, so can Guardsmen. So hopefully something there was interesting to you folks. I'm going to let you get on with your day real quick. Go order some of those Space Marines, goodness me. Order some Guardsmen rather. And I will see you next time with some more painting.